way up high. It wasn't a hard place, the place in which Leo now sat. No, it was quite soft and quite fine, as the bedding was also fine, and his worries soft. Yes, it was quite the place, this bed, in this castle, of this kingdom, from these people. How he had found himself in such a state, well, he could only chuckle at the thought and then sigh quite outwardly, a breath that was encumbered with grief, and with a tiredness seldom found within those of the castle walls, which therein seemed somehow to echo his thoughts, and so were his thoughts, so filled with anger, rage really, and sadness, and grief, and all the rest. Swallow them now he did with a small pint that was brought to him personally as the customary drink of the castle, in which he now ate, and drank and slept from here on. It was the Varentines wine, as this was the Varentines Castle. It was in fact so easy going herein, within the castle walls, within the castle itself. It seemed, at least comparably to the forest, to his old home, to the rest outside, that it was quite obvious that he was in good company, regardless of the actual company of those who dwelled within. He had yet changed his ways for them. Perhaps you could not say that, as he had changed his manner of speech somewhat, and he had on himself a new chainmail, and new garments of fine clothing, which were personally embroidered by the finest of embroiders within the kingdom, obviously, as this castle did represent the kingdom, and those who breathed and lived within the country of England, Brenton's country, and now his castle, at least in part. The king, of course, the King Rolf, did own the castle. It did, of course, belong to him. And Brenton was merely one man, a new member of his royal guard to accompany him in battle and elsewhere, and to take his leisure or his fancy at any other time. Brenton could only smile now. It had been a long path, a long journey, and some trickery had been required, but he was no thief, nor was he a trickster, and of course he was simply mad with hunger, a hunger for something more. And he had found it here in this place, next to the king of all men. How he had come to find himself in such a state again, he could not quite understand it. Though he knew which paths he'd taken, he could never have imagined how, indeed, it would have come to pass that he might find his employment in such a place. But Brenton digressed. Luck, fortune, and his own keen wit and furious strength. That was what had brought him to such a state. That was what had brought him to this castle. Indeed, as he sat there waiting and listening, hearing only the slightest of a flicker of a torch burning against the stone walls of his quarters there within the castle, it was no coincidence, he thought, that the northernmost territories of the country were of such wealth, though he could not pinpoint exactly why that was. Perhaps it was the winter, he thought. As down further south in the country, it wasn't as harsh of a winter, and the people therein grew quite comfortable. Or perhaps it was something more pragmatic. He did not know. Tirelessly, really, the people were down south, however, with not much to take care of except, of course, the fields, which were easy to plow as it rained much and the earth was soft and plentiful. The soil with such a viscosity that it might as well have been made of a nutritious pudding. It was that easy to grow crops in that part of the lands. There, too, the restlessness of the people was great, and though they had plenty or enough, and though many were content with this, there was a growing population there that was not. And they wanted more. They wanted conquest, or rather adventure. That was where Brenton had grown up, and that had been his thinking of the world, that it was something that he ought to go out, endure, and venture past, beyond, to something more, and he had. He had done it. He had made it. Setting down his pint now, Brenton laid back, still fully armored on the soft bedding. He took a breath of the sultry air, which tasted as lavender smelled. It nearly made him cough, and though he did not at first realize it, he quickly came to understand that they must have put the room in a scent of lavender. A perfume, surely, of the highest of qualities. It was not something that he enjoyed the strength of it, but it was not a bad smell. And compared to the smell of his hometown, which smelled of shit, he couldn't be happier. Still, he missed the woods already, where he'd spent much of his time traveling, as there were many woods, many forests, between the Varentines Castle and the southernmost part of England. He'd sustained a somewhat minor injury Brenton had in his travels to the castle and the town in which it stood, Berkshire. It had only just begun to heal, though it yet stung the wound, but despite this, Brenton yet carried his armor. For what purpose, he did not know. He thought to take it off, that he might perhaps relieve himself of the pain, but for one reason or another, he simply wished not to, or rather, he did not care one way or the other. In any case, he had to wake up early in order to escort the king around the castle, which he had been assured he would become acquainted with somewhat soon. The castle, with its high walls and its high place atop the hill of the town, city really, though it was actually quite small for a city, and much more resembled a town if towns and townhouses were made of stone, and their architecture such that it appeared that God may have constructed them, but no matter. Of course, Brenton was looking forward to escorting the king around the castle. He would acquaint himself with it and the castle grounds throughout, as it were important that he learn the area. He would perhaps, of course, need to defend it, or the king therein one day, so it was only intelligent that he should learn exactly now and how he would do so. And once he saw it, once he had acquainted himself with its nuanced lawns and inner walls, outer walls, and the rest, he would then have a good idea on how to defend it, though perhaps that was beyond his profession. He was, of course, only a member of the King's Guard, a high position, but lesser than some, and he was not the defender of the castle or the kingdom for that matter. He was nothing more, he thought to himself soundly, and with great endearment, than a royal bodyguard. The thought made him laugh to himself, and how much precisely royalty did suit him. Quite literally, he was unsure, as his overgarments, which did cover his armor, were perhaps too fine, silken as they were. It was a strange feeling to be here, now, in this place. And by the time he closed his eyes and sleep did take him, the morning light did wake him. He was used to the roosters of a farm, which of course had not belonged to him, and their early morning cries, but yet so there were none here, and so he found himself now here, adjusting to a new rhythm of awakening. When the knock came on his door, he was prepared, and he rose, his armor shilling, and opened the door to his quarters. There was, of course, another guard awaiting him on the other side of the oaken door, which must have been 3 inches thick, and which had been shut tight with a metal latch. Brenton lowered his eyes and then raised them again to take account of the guard, to size him up, so to speak. And he first noted that the man, although shorter than he was of a great stocky build, as was Brenton, though not as much so, and it seemed apparent to him that it was an extremely strong individual, probably very capable of defending the king against enemies, though as was Brenton. And the guard, although never having had met Brenton before, did take notice of this fact. Still, he was quite harsh when he spoke. Sir Brenton. Brenton forgot. He was a sir now. Yes, sir, Brenton said, allowing his words to trail off, as the guard looked him in the eye warily, as though it was quite the offense that he did not know his name. It's Sir Rucker, he nearly spat out. Despite his bulk, the Sir Rucker seemed very particular, Brenton supposed, and he decided to attempt to be somewhat particular himself, though he didn't exactly succeed. Why, yes, Sir Rucker, I must have forgotten you. I am sorry for that. We've never met, said Sir Rucker quickly in response, and with a sigh. You're not royalty. Don't try to act like it. Now Brenton was annoyed, and obviously so, but he kept his calm and reframed himself. My apologies, he shrugged. Perhaps I at least appear noble. In appearance, Sir Rucker said, in agreement, softening himself. Perhaps it is best that you simply keep yourself quiet, then. Brenton nodded with a smile. He was starting to enjoy Rucker. Of course. Follow me, said Sir Rucker, turning somewhat abruptly. Where do we lead to? Brenton asked. We lead to the king, he said, to his stead. The king, Brenton thought nervously. He gulped. Perhaps he had not yet found his footing here, but no matter was it, he would continue and beyond so. To the king of Varentines Castle. and the king of the kingdom of England.